One, two, three. Three count four.
Hello, I am Be Better Gamer. Welcome to Be Better Gamer Wrestling, the channel dedicated to wrestling video games fueled by my love, passion, and obsession for them. I am playing WWF No Mercy, part of the legendary Aki series of N64 wrestling games, my favorite wrestling series of all time. And I am going to be continuing the Tag Team Championship Let's Play that I've been doing on this channel for a bit. And I am playing as the Holly cousins, Hardcore Holly and Crash Holly. Here they are coming out, Crash Holly with the scale. The only time that tag teams come out together in WWF No Mercy is in the championship mode, so it's always cool to see that. Because when you do it like regular exhibition matches with tag team players, wrestlers, whatever, if you do tag team exhibition matches, I should say, they don't come out together like they did in WrestleMania 2000 and Revenge and Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 and all the other Aki games that came before it, essentially. But here I go. So there's a little bit of a backstory to this. I am playing this on my EverDrive, my N64 EverDrive. A couple of weeks ago, I reported that my WWF No Mercy cartridge data was lost, and I was like, you know, I wasn't too upset. I was like, no big deal. It wasn't really gonna affect everything because I already had, you know, saved most of the calls I had saved onto my memory card, and I had recorded all my tag team championship modes previously. I just didn't do the audio for them, so I was like, all right, no harm, no foul. It's not gonna be too big of a deal. I shouldn't stress out about it. I mean, it sucks that I have to replace my No Mercy cartridge, but you know, whatever. Here I go doing a DQ. I do have to say I have to lose the first 3 matches, and fortunately, every match that I have to play that I have to lose, you can lose via DQ. So to me, that's the quickest way to lose. Some people like to get counted out. That takes a little bit longer, especially if the AI is stubborn and they want to throw you back in the ring, because sometimes they want to do that. But easiest way, go outside, grab the steps, come back inside, hit them over the head, and maybe you'll get a bloody face like we just saw. So I gotta lose the first 3 matches. So I gotta lose. Here we go. I gotta lose to Eddie Guerrero in China. So yeah, I thought no big deal, like whatever. And as I was going through, you know, catching up on my tag team Let's Plays, I did the British Bulldogs, I did Edge and Christian, and I had recorded the Hollies and Too Cool as the last 2. Spoiler alert: Too Cool is the next one. And when I went into my footage, where I saved all my footage, I couldn't find the Hollies. I don't know what happened to it. I'm pretty sure I remember recording it because I remember playing as them, and I did all the tag team championship paths in like a few days, and I had written out who I wanted to play as, so I had it all written down. The Hollies, they were the second to last ones, and could not find it. So I lied when I said when my No Mercy data being erased wasn't gonna affect my Let's Plays of the channel. It did, and I was kind of bummed out because, you know, the whole goal of doing these tag team championship Let's Plays is I want to 100% the paths, and now that I lost all my 100% on my No Mercy cartridge, and now I'm kind of starting from scratch on this cartridge, it's kind of wonky, so I didn't know what to do. So I was like, you know what, let me just replay the Holly path the way I was supposed to play it, which is this path you see before you, where I have to lose the first 3 and then win the rest, and then just keep going and then upload my Too Cool Let's Play that I recorded months ago. So needless to say, this tag team championship path, at the end of it, is creating a little bit of a difficulty, because also I think I mentioned this in my British Bulldogs Let's Play, the Dynamite Kid call that I made, I did not save on the memory pack. I had to recreate it all over again, and I didn't write down what I did before I lost the data, so I had to remake everything. I had to look at my old British Bulldog footage that I recorded months ago, along with all the other tag team championship paths, and kind of figure out what I did. You know, I remembered the outfits, you know, what he wore, but I had to like look at the moves, just see what I put, go back to the footage of the Dynamite Kid that I was watching for research for his moveset. So I hope this is the end of the problems that losing my WWF No Mercy data has caused me, and I can keep going forward, because I have the Too Cool Let's Play coming up, and then I'm going to be moving on to the Women's Championship path. I might throw in a bonus Kai and Tai tag team path. We'll see how I'm feeling. I actually did stream the other day. I did stream myself playing as Kai and Tai to prepare for this Let's Play, and that was fun. I lost twice to the APA, and then I just, it was like these long grueling matches against the APA and then the last chance that I had to play against them, it was a handicap match. I ended up destroying them, so it was funny how that worked out, but that was fun. I want to start streaming more. Especially since I have to be unlocking everything all over again on my EverDrive, so I might as well do that on stream. I don't want to recreate Let's Plays for all the different championship paths. I mean, there's a few people, people have mentioned they would have liked to see a Kai and Tai tag team championship path. There's a few other champions from the other paths that I did not include, and some people requested them, so I might go back and do that. I might go back and do the ones that were requested, and everything else I'll just do everything on stream. And yeah, we could chit chat about wrestling. So if you're not already following me, and you probably aren't because I don't stream, but go to my Twitch page, twitch.tv/BeBetterGamer, and hopefully you'll see me start streaming more frequently. I'm free to stream during the days, but I'll address it in my monthly update that I got coming up, where I'll talk about my plans going forward to consistently stream more. So yeah, so why the Hollies though? Let's get back to the Hollies. We got the Hollies right now in there with the Dudley boys. This is another match I have to lose. These matches are kind of tricky to lose. It's a tornado tag match. Falls count anywhere. It's a hardcore tag team match, I should say. That's what the game calls it. But you basically are up to the mercy of the computer trying to beat you up, and thankfully Bubba Ray put me down pretty quickly. Just do nothing really is the best advice. Just let them beat you up. Maybe go for strong grapples if you know that, like, let's say you have a Hurricanrana and they can counter it into a power bomb, or any pinning move that they can reverse into another pinning move. Maybe go for that, and then the computer can easily win. Here comes Shane. A lot of people are saying, like, you should talk more about the gameplay, so I should talk more about the gameplay. I always get distracted reading the notes and all the stuff I want to talk about with the context of what's going on at the time with WWF No Mercy. And the Hollies are interesting because I thought they were a kind of a fun tag team. Obviously they're not like a extremely decorated tag team like the other tag teams we've talked about, and you can't really say with the British Bulldogs, they were a very influential tag team, even though they only had one tag team run. Can't really say that about the Hollies. So why Hollies? Well, I mean, I think it just highlights that in order to have a very strong tag team division, not everyone can be a superstar tag team. You need your mid card kind of tag teams. You need your underneath guys. You need your tag teams that are gonna help support the higher hubs, and the Hollies definitely fit that slot. I mean, they were tag team champions. They were sort of inserted into the storyline that was Mankind and The Rock, the Rock and Sock connection sort of breaking up, and they were able to capture the tag team titles because of that. But then they would lose the titles about 2 weeks later to Al Snow and Mankind, and it was all really there just to help further the plot that was developing between The Rock and Sock. So that was their tag team championship reign. But I think what was interesting about them being formed, Bob Holly, he really started coming into his own, and I talked about this in my Hardcore Championship Let's Play. I have a Hardcore Championship Let's Play with both Hardcore and Crash. There I go, slamming Rikishi. It's always fun facing super heavyweights because, like Rikishi and Viscera, because you can just weak grapple them, and usually one of your weak grapple moves will just be a body slam, and you get like double the boost to your spirit meter, so that's always makes it easier. And this is actually really interesting. I think I put him away pretty fast here because I didn't really do too much damage to him, but my meter got all the way up because I am facing Rikishi and I'm doing those big body slams. And then I hit him with the Rikishi driver, give him a taste of his own finisher, and then hit him with the Falcon Arrow, and Richards is like, he's kicking out of it, right? And he doesn't. He gets pinned very quick. If only every match went like that, right? if the AI doesn't run in. I do have to say I like that the AI runs in and saves, their partner more often than not, because that makes the tag team matches that much more interesting and challenging, and you need a little bit more strategy, like how am I going to deal with knocking the other person out so he doesn't run in. But it's really funny when you see a moment like that where you somehow, some way are able to just beat the opponent in a minute, and even the AI is like, well, I didn't think that was going to happen. So that's what happened with Richards. Now we're continuing our gauntlet. All the damage is going to be taking over. That's what screwed me up in the Kaientai Let's Play. My damage was taking over, and I was stuck in that handicap match with Taka, so I was really handicapped in there, because not only was it 2 against 1, but because I was taking extra damage. So yeah, so the Hollies, with Hardcore Holly, I talked about in his Let's Play, he really came into his own when he started becoming Hardcore Holly, but he was with the WWF for a very long time before that. Sparkplug, Bob Holly, and even he was part of the new Midnight Express with Bart Gunn. Bart Gunn also, he was with the Smoking Guns, and it almost seemed like Bob Holly was just sort of going to be stuck like that, stuck just getting thrown around to random teams and partners and alliances. And I will believe it or not, at one point Sparkplug Holly was a good guy. He was a babyface. He actually captured the tag team championship with 1-2-3 Kid for a day, and so he was a tag team champion previously before teaming with Crash. And then after Crash, after all was said and done, later on he would team with Cody Rhodes, and he would become tag team champion for about 202 days before Cody Rhodes turned on him and joined with Ted DiBiase Jr. Remember that happened? So yeah, pretty interesting that Hardcore Holly's biggest tag team success came without his cousin. You would think that him and his cousin would do a little bit better, but they were always fighting, they were always feuding. And what I really enjoyed about that, which is another reason why I wanted to kind of talk about them, is that the Hollies, they were another fictional family, another fictional tag family. And what was great about that was that they fought all the time, which was like realistic if you think about it. You know what I mean? Like, here's cousins who are a team, but they don't agree. Hardcore is always trying to tell Crash what to do, and Crash is like, don't tell me what to do, don't tell me how to live my life. And then they just start fighting all the time. And I always thought that was really funny. I thought that was a really funny dynamic. I always talk about tag teams and the kind of tag teams I like, and there's a lot of different tag teams I like. I always talk about tag teams who look the same, who have the same matching gear. Stuff is cool. But even in the case of Edge and Christian, you don't have to look the same, but if you just both have very dynamic personalities, or if you have personalities that complement each other, there's so many different ways to go about it. And of course, the family dynamic is always very fun and interesting if they are really related. But if they're not related, then I feel like you have a little bit more creative freedom. And look at the Dudley boys, look at Kane and the Undertaker, the brothers of destruction. Even earlier I mentioned the Smoking Guns, Bart Gunn and Billy Gunn, Edge and Christian, even Ole and Arn. For the longest time when I was a kid, I thought Ole and Arn were actually related, and they're not. I think that's great. If you find someone who kind of looks like you can kind of say they're related. No one's going to know. I mean, unless they look it up. But, the Wyatt family, were they ever actually, said, yeah, we're actually brothers, but they didn't call themselves a family. Maybe it was just, kind of a thing, when you call someone your bro, but they're not really your brother. But, a lot of these teams, you don't really see them disagree a lot, which is, what we do really as families, right? We always disagree with our siblings, with our cousins. But then, if something's at stake, we'll work together and we'll push through despite our differences. And what also made it really appealing was the fact that they were including themselves in the hardcore division, because, hardcore came first with that. He was Hardcore Holly, and then he introduced his cousin Crash, and they started doing tag team matches. But because Hardcore Holly was Hardcore Holly, he was still being involved with the Hardcore Championship. And it's really interesting because you look at the time. So if we look at from November of 2000 to, or I should say November of 1999 to November of 2000, the first part of it really was all about the Hollies kind of teaming up, and then the next part, when you get to the WrestleMania 2000, they have that hardcore battle royal where at the end there's like this big mix-up, and I think actually there was like a botched spot where Hardcore Holly was supposed to win the title, but the timing was all off, so Crash ended up winning it, and then they had to fix it the next night on Raw. And that kind of started the Hardcore Holly and Crash really feuding with each other over the Hardcore title along with everyone else. But then Hardcore Holly would get hurt. He would break his arm in a match against Kurt Angle when Kurt Angle went for the moonsault and came right down on Hardcore's arm. And I remember watching that. I remember when that actually happened. It was crazy to think that you saw Hardcore Holly just like scream out, like, because you could tell he really got hurt from that move. And then we come to find out his arm was broken. So, no matter how hardcore you are, if someone does a moonsault and breaks your arm from it, it's gonna hurt. And we started to see Crash come out on his own because of that. But a lot of that, I think, was helped by the interactions between Hardcore and Crash, because it created an interesting dynamic, because obviously we all wanted to root for Crash and we all wanted to hate Hardcore Holly. And I think this is something that you don't see a lot of in tag teams today, where one guy we all really like and then the other guy we don't. And I think that's a great dynamic to have for a tag team, because it's able to walk that line. It's like, are they a babyface team or are they a heel team? And if they're family, it would make sense for one person to be with the other, even if, that person is bad and the other person is good. I think back to when Eddie Guerrero and Chavo, and Eddie Guerrero used to abuse him, when they were in WCW, but Chavo would still team up with him. So you had sympathy, you built sympathy for Chavo. And it's a very little thing, and again, it's with the Hollies. It's not like they were in the main event scene, but it's just something I think we could look back and sort of analyze, and how could we repeat that? How can we do that today and make it better? How can we elevate it? You look at a lot of the tag teams right now, there are a few tag teams where they are actually related. The Usos obviously come to mind. But you could definitely create a tag team and say, yeah, they're related, and then have that dynamic where, or not even if they're not actually related, but if they are, you can have one be really a heel and the other one be a babyface, and I think that will make you more interested in the tag team, especially if they're good, if they're really good wrestlers. So that's what I liked about the Hollies. I also liked when they introduced Molly Holly. I thought that was really cool. I don't think enough times, especially today, they are now finally doing the mixed tag match, tournament on Facebook, which is really cool, because I'm glad that they're having the women and the men interact more. But I thought it was really cool to introduce a third cousin, and then ended up being Molly Holly. It ended up being a female cousin, and that was great, because I always like when stables or teams have a presence outside of them. You know what I mean? Like, NWO, they're the NWO. It's Hogan and Scott Hall and Nash, and then they have Six, who's fighting on the Cruiserweight division. DX had Chyna, and Rick Rude, who was a manager. And the Hollies, they had Molly Holly, so now their presence is still, carrying over into the women's division. The same thing with the Hardys. When the Hardys had Lita, every time she came out, not only did you want to see Lita, but it also reminded you that she was with the Hardys. So it's always cool, I think, when a team adds a female dynamic, and then that female is actually a wrestler. She's not just a manager or a valet. And Molly Holly was great. I loved Molly Holly. I thought she was a great wrestler. I thought she was great in the ring. A lot of similarities there with Crash, where you really felt like, sympathetic to her, because it's like, man, your cousins are kind of the worst, right? Your cousins, especially Hardcore. Like, Hardcore is kind of a douche, and, and you're sweet. Why are you with him? Like, oh, okay, because you're family. And, they're not really family, but, and, speaking of the Dudleys, I faced them earlier, but, the whole Holly feud against the Dudley feud revolving around Molly Holly being romantically interested into Spike Dudley. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was great. I was really into that storyline. There's not a whole lot of storylines that I kind of like dig. You know what I mean? I'm just like, just get out there and wrestle sometimes. You know what I mean? Like when I watch WWE, when I watch wrestling, a lot of the times the storylines, I would like them to be fueled by the competitiveness, the want and the need to become champion, to become number one. But every once in a while there'll be a nice storyline where it has nothing to do with wrestling and it's just completely separated. And WWE does it all the time, but you don't really see that often. You don't really see two families, quote unquote, going at it because one family's in love with the other. And you can do that if you have a female wrestler that's part of your team. It's it's very Romeo and Juliet, and it was comedic, it was funny, but it was also like kind of dangerous for Spike, kind of dangerous for Molly, because the Dudleyz, they've put women through tables in the past. They have no problem beating up Spike Dudley, another one. It's like, why are you with these guys? Like, yeah, they're your brother, quote unquote brother, but it just makes it a little bit interesting, and we haven't really seen a storyline like that since then. And it's kind of a shame because I think you could still do it today, and even more so today, you can get people involved. I think we always want to gravitate towards the person that we know is good and they're stuck behind people who are bad. You know what I mean? Like they're stuck behind people who are bad influencers. And you've seen that throughout time in wrestling, even with other teams, certain, look at Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn right now. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn is a perfect example. Sami Zayn, known as the, always trying to do the right thing, always trying to play by the rules, and, getting turned on by his friend Kevin Owens, since Kevin Owens showed up in NXT, and always getting abused. And then eventually he helps Kevin Owens, but now he's like on the dark side, and we all want to see Sami come out of that. We're like, no, Sami, what are you doing? This is wrong. And I think there's always something there, and in a funny way you can look back at the Hollies, and the Hollies were doing it, and this is something I go back to. When you have an actual well-rounded division, you can do stuff like that. When you have a division that has a very competitive group of people, you have more liberties and freedom to tell better stories, and you just gotta put the focus on it. You just gotta put the focus on it so that it can be believable that, all right, we're gonna do this angle with the Hollies and Molly Holly, and people are gonna be invested because, hey, the Dudleys are in it, and everyone helps elevate each other. And yeah, you don't have to have the mid-card guys go over, but every once in a while you can give them their little victories. And, the Crash Holly, Molly Holly, those were little victories that gave you, weeks and weeks of television and pay-per-view, and I just don't see that today. And I think this is something that everyone talks about without actually saying it when it comes back to looking back at the Attitude Era. And that's why I do these Let's Plays with some of the more, I wouldn't say unpopular, because everyone, I think, who watched WWE remembered the Holly cousins, so they were definitely popular in a way with their super heavyweight gimmick and everything like that, and Crash with the 24/7 rule. But it wasn't just the main event scene that was entertaining. It was everything underneath. Usually there was a through line throughout the show, and a lot of the mid-card guys and even maybe the low-card guys had storylines that weave through their own place on the card, but sometimes would work up to the main event and they would intersect. You don't see a lot of that intersection happening right now. A perfect example would be, say, the Titus brand. Okay, a perfect example would see maybe Apollo Crews is wrestling Braun Strowman because Titus thinks it's a good idea to get the Titus brand over. And then while they're wrestling, Kane comes out and causes Braun Strowman to lose the match via DQ or no count out, So then the Titus brand all of a sudden starts walking around, and Apollo Crews is bragging about how he beat Braun Strowman. And it's just you're intersecting two storylines. You're intersecting the main event storyline, which is Braun Strowman, Kane, gearing up to face Lesnar, and then you're intersecting a mid-card storyline, which is the Titus brand trying to become this thing, this prestigious stable in WWE. I think when you do that, it elevates the entire show. It keeps you interested because you're able to weave in the main event players, the people you want to see, with the people that you might not be paying attention to, but then all of a sudden when you see they have a storyline, you can get hooked on their storyline. You don't see that enough, I think. You don't usually, when you see guys intersect, it's at the detriment to the mid-card guys. You know what I mean? Like I'm pretty sure the Titus brand tried to do something like that where Samoa Joe just beat them up, and it's just like, and then now they're not seen as being part of this world. They're not seen as that they could hang believably once in a while with the main event. You go back to the Hollies winning against The Rock and Sock. So if The Rock was there, they would have no chance of winning. But because The Rock wasn't, The Rock was there, but because Mankind didn't help The Rock, then The Rock, even 2 against 1, he still lost. You know what I mean? And that not only strengthens the tag team, but it also shows that, they could hang if, they had a little bit more of an advantage. Obviously they're not as good as The Rock as, in Mankind, but here, because Rock and Mankind are feuding, they're able to capitalize and they're able to hang. If The Rock was able to just beat them anyway, then why would we care about the Hollies when they came back on the screen the next time? Why would we see them as a threat when they're facing the Hardy Boys or the Dudley Boys or Edge and Christian? You have to be smart sometimes about how you intersect your storylines. And when you have the upper card guys just running through the mid card and the low card division, it doesn't help those guys. It doesn't help them at all. It makes the upper card guys look good, but it doesn't make the mid card guys look good because they look like a joke. And if you think they're a joke against The Rock or the Mankind, then you're gonna think they're a joke against everyone else. That's just how it is. You know what I mean? And I think you can look at some of these less decorated tag teams, like the Hollies, like Too Cool, which we'll get to in a bit. In the next Let's Play, you can look at them, and even Head Cheese and the Radicals, Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko, and how they were involved with everything that Benoit and Eddie Guerrero was doing, Bull Buchanan and Big Boss Man, or Right to Censor when Stevie Richards was with Bull Buchanan and Val Venus. Sometimes you need those mid-card teams to help elevate the upper-card teams and to help continuing storylines for main events. And it has to be believable. It has to be like, okay, I could believably see the Hollies winning here because I've saw them win in the past. You have to connect the dots. And I don't know, I just don't see that enough, especially with the tag team division. I talked about it in my last Let's Play, that I feel like the tag team division, there's no focus on it. It's just filler. They just use the tag team matches as filler. It's like, oh, we need a match. Let the tag team division do it. The New Day and the Usos was like one of the most entertaining feuds that the tag team division has had in a while. And I still, I just don't think that they want the tag team division to be as popular as it once was. In this whole Let's Play, I've talked about it nonstop, but the tag team division in WWE was probably the most popular around this time, with the Hardys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys, where I think people were as invested, if not more invested, some fans, what was going on with those 3 teams than, everything else that was going on. But it couldn't have just been those 3 teams. You needed this entire tag team division. You needed sort of this world built around this entire tag team division, and the Hollies played a part of that. So that's why I wanted to do the Hollies. they weren't like my favorite tag team. In the game, Hardcore Holly is decent to play as. Crash Holly is decent to play as. What bugs me about Crash Holly to play as in WWF No Mercy is that in actual WWE, he flew around a lot more. He would dive to the outside. He wasn't doing any topes or anything like that, but he's got like almost no flying moves in WWF No Mercy, which is maybe they were doing that for the super heavyweight, gimmick. What's also really cool is that you see him come out with the scale and the backwards hat. And this is a cool little detail, but that's not his first outfit. That's his second outfit. His first outfit is his other Crash attire where he wasn't really teaming up with Hardcore Holly. And I just like that, you could do that. You can have separate entrance attires, separate outfits. It's pretty neat. And the whole walking animation and things like that, like that's how you know that the Crash Holly super heavyweight thing was funny with both of them calling themselves super heavyweights, because they actually worked it into the game. They didn't have to say, oh yeah, we're gonna make this scale. Crash Holly is the only one who brings it into the ring. They made time and resources. Someone had to make it. One of the designers is like, hey, could you spend a few minutes and make this scale, and then make this specific walking animation to hold this scale. It's kind of funny when you think about it. It's not like a move, because like a move can be used for other wrestlers. So even if one wrestler does the move, when people create their own wrestler, they can make the move. But here it's like, who's going to have the scale? Who's going to walk? If you've ever created an original creation and you gave them the big giant scale to walk in, let me know. Shoot me a picture. And don't just do it for the sake of doing it because I asked. Be like, yeah, I've had this call for like 5 years, and he comes out with the scale because he's also a super heavyweight or something. I just thought that was funny. Like, why would they include that? Here I go facing the tag team champions Kai and Tai, who, even though Funaki is basically the same character as Taka because he's just an alternate costume, I still probably would prefer playing as Kai and Tai over the Hollies, just because they do more flying moves, they do more high flying stuff. But again, the Hollies, that's another thing that I like what tag teams do, when they have a very clear difference in ability. Yeah, it's cool to have your two high flyers, like Kai and Tai. They both have a similar style, Taka and Funaki. But I think, I don't know, if I had to choose, I like the tag teams where one guy that is like the big strong guy, the big muscle, the powerhouse, and then the other guy is the fast, quick, athletic one. He's got more agility. I just like tag teams with a little bit of a different dynamic. When they're, if they work together and they really work well, like the Revival or the Dudleyz, then they could be similar. That's fine, But when there's more of a very visible, clear dynamic, I think it makes the tag team work a little bit better. I don't know. Maybe it just works a little bit better for me. I like seeing that more. I think back to Owen Hart and Yokozuna. Like what a great dynamic that was with Owen Hart and Yokozuna. Very clearly, you could see the difference. Even with Too Cool, with Rikishi and Sky Too Hottie and Grandmaster Sexy, they were a very clear dynamic. The British Bulldogs I talked about in my last Let's Play, they were similar in height, but British Bulldog was clearly the powerhouse, and Dynamite Kid, he was strong also, but he was very much the fast, high flying one. And I like that with tag teams, and the Hollies had that too. I always wonder, right, if you're writing for WWE today, or even if you're a wrestler coming up today, why not look at what the mid-card wrestlers were doing, or maybe the lower card wrestlers were doing. Look at what they were doing and say, how can I elevate this? How can I make this better? Because I think the trick is, I don't know, this is just me, I think when you see people who become super successful, sometimes you can look at them and see what they've done and be like, okay, yeah, all right, The Rock was really good at promos, he was really good at this, but like he was also a very unique individual, so you probably can't be like The Rock. You probably can't be like Stone Cold. You probably can't be like Chris Jericho. But I think you can look at some other people and say, well, I can probably do what they did, but just a little bit better, and like kind of mix the two. I can be like, Crash Holly, but then have a little bit of The Rock. And it might sound stupid, but I think that's because I think that would work because, when you try to emulate someone who everyone knows, everyone's just going to be like, oh, that's that guy. Oh, he's just trying to be like The Rock. Or he's trying to be like Austin. But when you emulate people that weren't as popular, and then you're able to A, put your own self into it more, and then B, people won't be so quick to say, oh, you're like this person. They'll probably say, oh, they're like this person, but better. Oh, they're a better Hardcore Holly. They're a better Val Venus. They're a better, Stevie Richards. They're a better Raven. I think that, I don't know, I would look to that. And even if you're writing for WWE and you look at certain storylines, it's like, okay, that love triangle between the Hollies and Molly Holly and Spike Dudley, people really seem to enjoy it. How can we sort of recreate this to now and maybe use it with higher level guys, upper card guys, main event players? How can we, what's old is new again, right? And everyone's always going to be, nostalgia is always going to be present, and nostalgia is different for everyone. I'm nostalgic about the Attitude Era of wrestling, of the early 2000s and the late 90s, Some people are nostalgic about 80s wrestling, because that's when they were younger. That's when they were a kid. Video games, some people are nostalgic about, A Link to the Past or Ocarina of Time. There's going to be people who are going to be nostalgic about Breath of the Wild one day because that was their first Zelda video game. I think, everyone's always going to be interested in the past, but I think if you're smart, I think you look to the past for inspiration and just kind of update it. Like, what can I do now that can take that, why hasn't there been another cruiserweight who has done the super heavyweight gimmick or something similar? I mean, the first time I ever saw the quote unquote super heavyweight gimmick was actually from from Spike Dudley in ECW. He was the Giant Killer, and then funny enough, he would be involved with the love story. But in ECW, Spike Dudley, the Giant Killer, he's coming in and people are cheering for him, and he's doing, his acid drop on, which is basically a diamond cutter, that he runs up the ropes and turns around. But he's fighting all the big guys. He's fighting the people who are clearly bigger than him. Even before that, in a way, you could even say Mikey Whipwreck was kind of like that. But he would always lose. and that was his thing. But, I look at the Cruiserweight division, and a lot of people are, like, wondering, like, oh, what are they going to do with the Cruiserweight division, this and that. I don't think Enzo was ever the guy. I have to be honest. I was really disappointed when they put the title on Enzo, when they brought Enzo to 205 Live. And everyone was like, oh, yeah, but he's entertaining. He can talk. Yeah, well, he always came off as a douche. And now we find out in real life he's a douche. So, I never thought that would be, the key to 205 Live. But you look at Crash Holly, he was able to go from the light heavyweight division to the tag team division to the hardcore division. I think that, and that was because his character allowed him to. I think with the Cruiserweights, I think they should allow them to have characters that go beyond just being defined by the Cruiserweights. Look at a guy like Cedric Alexander or Mustafa Ali. Like, these aren't people who should just be wrestling on the Cruiserweight division. They should be wrestling on, against the other Raw superstars. They should be having matches with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose, guys who aren't even that much bigger than them. But even why isn't there one Cruiserweight who we see them on 205 Live, but then we see them on Raw picking fights with Braun Strowman, picking fights with super heavyweights that can just destroy them, and then coming back to 205 Live, and then they're walking around like they're the biggest guy there, but they're not. Like, how fun would that be? And again, it's just taking that super heavyweight gimmick that the Hollies did, sort of, you know, and just reworking it, applying it to what's going on right now, applying it to today. And I think it would still be interesting, because if it worked back then, it'll probably work now, as long as you adjust it, as long as you work it to what's going on now, to the time that's going on now. Could you walk out with a scale? Yeah, but then everyone would be like, oh, but they're just doing what Crash Holly did. We've seen this before. So you got to do it in a different way. You got to do it in a different way. You got to have, you know, maybe Samoa Joe is beating up on John Cena, right? And then all of a sudden, I don't know, Lindsay Dorado comes out. Lindsay Dorado comes out and like tries to help John Cena, and Samoa Joe, you know, he's like, it's like a fly, like you're bothering me, get out of here. But that allows John Cena to, you know, beat him, you know, give him the, you know, F you, and then like, you know, then they'll have a match later on because of that. And then you have John Cena later on saying, so Lindsay, like, what was that about? Like, why would you come out and face Samoa Joe? Like, you clearly could not beat him. And he'd be like, yeah, man, you know, I just don't like, you know, Samoa Joe throwing his weight around. He's not that tough, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like, and, you know, me and you, John, we're buddies. I couldn't see my buddy like that, no matter what the size. Like, you would automatically empathize with that dude. You'd be like, yo, he's a good friend. He's a good dude. And then, like, you can do a tag team match, John Cena, Lindsay against Samoa Joe, and whoever. And then, you know, obviously Lindsay takes to pin, but you see that heart, you see that fire, you see that passion comes out, so that when you go to 205 Live, you're more invested with Lindsay, because he's competing with people who are on his same range. I'm just riffing here. I'm just like using names. I'm just using people. But you can apply these, if you really want to apply these concepts, you can. And I don't see what's so hard about that. Because looking at, when I go back and I do research for a team like the Hollies, even though I'm like, yeah, why isn't anyone doing this? This still works. This is still interesting. Why don't we have a tag team that splits up, you know, and you know, are they going to do that with Rollins and Jason Jordan? You know, Rollins just sits on the, you know, steps, and he doesn't want to help Jason Jordan, and Jason Jordan just gets demolished by Sheamus and Cesaro. But see, that kind of wouldn't work, because you knew Sheamus and Cesaro would destroy him anyway. You got to do it with another tag team. The Miztourage, you know, you have that happen with the Miztourage. Now you hate Seth Rollins. I mean, and again, I'm just throwing names. We're not gonna hate Seth Rollins. He was already bad. Now he's good. But you know, now you're empathetic to Jason Jordan's cause, because he was out there trying to beat the Miztourage, and he kind of could beat the Miztourage by himself, but he really needs his partner. But since his partner's not there and he's distracted, the Miztourage are able to get the upper hand. Boom, you're establishing two things. You're making the Miztourage seem like a competent tag team that can get their stuff together when they know they're in the advantage, and they can take, you know, they can take the opportunity when they have it. Getting Jason Jordan over as being sympathetic to his cause, because, like, you know, that's messed up what you're doing, Rollins, just sitting there not looking at him. And, you know, it's like you could do these same things, you know, maybe in different ways. Maybe don't have Rollins just sit on the steps. Maybe have Rollins refusing to come out. Show him watching the monitor, and he's just watching, and he's not coming out, you know. And you could do so many things like that it's the little things. When I look back, when I do research for this channel, when I have to do research for guys that maybe I don't remember everything they did, like the Hollies, that I'm always surprised to see again, you know, and I remember it, and it's just like, yeah, man, like, it's these little things that you just don't see enough of, the little details that I think are missing. Everything's about the big picture, you know. Look at Raw 25. Raw 25 is a perfect example, you know, because here you have a crowd that's desperate to just cheer, because they're so excited to be there. They're so excited. They're going to cheer for every little thing. And then twice, and both in the tag matches, in the 6-women tag match that opened the show, and then in that tag match that closed the show with the Revival against Gallows and Anderson, you know, they both started out just fighting, and then the ref broke them apart, and then made them stand away from each other, and then rang the bell. And I was shocked when I saw that. I was like, what are you doing? You're killing the momentum. You know, like all these women in the ring, it's a big thing, and then they just start going at it. The crowd's going crazy. Yeah, beat him up. You know, Nia Jax is throwing people, and then all of a sudden, the one little ref is breaking everyone up, telling everyone wait, and then like wasting like a good 45 seconds, minute to start the match, and then now we're gonna start a match where they're grappling. Like, you're killing the momentum. It's the little things. You would not see that in the Attitude Era. As soon as Stone Cold hit the ring and started hitting someone, or as soon as tag teams started hitting each other, and then the fight would break outside, the bell would be ring. Because as soon as, like, logically it doesn't even make sense. Like, why would they do that? Because as soon as they start fighting in the ring, you ring the bell. You know what I mean? You ring the bell, you just let them go, and then you try to get hang of it afterwards. If they get attacked out the ring, then you don't ring the bell. But if they're getting attacked in the ring, you ring the bell. These are the little things you see when you watch, you know, Attitude Era WWE, or, you know, even after that, that they don't just do anymore. They did the same thing in the Revival and Gallows and Anderson. I've been paying more attention to tag team matches now because of these Let's Plays, and because I've been watching a lot of the old tag team matches, and yeah, a lot of that logic is just gone. It's just non-existent. I remember the Big Show, he was on Stone Cold's podcast a few years ago when they still did the podcast on the network. Now you just gotta, you know, Stone Cold, he's always had his podcast, but I was excited when they were doing the podcast on the network, but then they stopped it. But even, you know, Stone Cold asked him, and it always stuck out to me, he was like, you know, what do you miss about the way wrestling used to be? You know, what do you miss? And then, like, Big Show was just like, you know, it's just the little things. You know, the little things that you just don't see anymore. You know, like in tag team matches, you know, where you get the heat on one wrestler, then you have the babyface make the big comeback, and then there you go, the match is over. And it's like, yes, yeah, like, what's wrong with wanting that back? Like, you know, it's like, I think people confuse, because don't get me wrong, I watch old WWE, and, you know, half the time I'm either really enjoying it, and half the time I'm cringing, you know, and then the other part of the time I'm also like, oh, nothing's changed, just still doing the same stupid stuff. But then there's those times where it's like, no, this works, this worked. They don't do this anymore. Why did they stop doing the stuff that works? And you see that a lot with tag teams. You see that a lot with tag team wrestling, especially because of the Attitude Era division. And even when, you know, this is why I want to work on other wrestling games, because when I work on other wrestling games, I could move forward a few years, because when you had the SmackDown 6, when you had that great tag team tournament on SmackDown, you know, the closest thing we come to something like that today, I would say, is like the Dusty Classic. You know, making a tag team tournament important, making tag team wrestling important, bringing it to that level. You know, Japan does it pretty well. They've been kind of, you know, New Japan specifically has been kind of, you know, I would say not as good as they were a few years ago with their tag team division, but they're starting to make a comeback. You know, with KES and Evil and Sanada having the tag team championship. But, you know, it's the kind of thing, it's like, okay, you paid attention to our singles wrestlers, but now you really have to pay attention to these tag team wrestlers, because our tag team division is legit, you know. And you would see that a lot in Attitude Era, and even post, you know, WWF No Mercy time frame, you know, 2002 era. You know, I always wonder what if the N64 was still around at that time, what that next WWE game would have looked at. And even if they managed to like stick around that long. Here we go, we got a ladder match with X-Pac and Shane. So normally when I do ladder matches, this is a question I get all the time. I get several questions about ladder matches. They always seem to pop up. How do you set up the ladder? And then how do you grab the belt? And it's funny because it can be a little tricky, and I know even sometimes I still struggle with it. But when you're doing a tag team ladder match, just let the computer set up the ladder, whether it's your opponent or your partner, because they will set it up perfectly every time. Look at the way that ladder is placed right dead center of the ring. I don't know if I just have really bad depth perception, but every time I set up the ladder in a ladder match, it's always at a wrong angle, or it's always a little too off. You have to make sure you get it so you're right under it, so that when you do climb the ladder, you're able to grab the belt. And when you're climbing up the ladder, okay, it's just like climbing the cage. So here's X-Pac climbing him. I'm gonna throw him down right away. But you press up C to climb up the ladder, and make sure you keep pressing up C, because there's gonna be a point where you get to the top and then your person stops, but you still have to press up C until the tap button starts to appear. The tap letters start flashing. That's when you start tapping A, because if you get to that point before it happens and you tap A, you're gonna do your high flying move. So you gotta be careful. You gotta make sure you get to the point. Here I know I'm gonna climb up now. Usually I let the computer climb up, but I thought I could take the opportunity because Crash was distracting X-Pac. But there you go. You saw that he knocked me off. X-Pac managed to get away, and he knocked me off. But when I got to the top, I started tapping A once I got to where the words were flashing. I get that question a lot, and it's funny, because like there's no in-game tutorial, which is a product of older video games. Really, not a lot of older video games had in-game tutorial, unless it was something very simple, like you could fit everything on one controller, and just everything just had one thing they did. Every button had one thing they did. But for a game like No Mercy, there's so many different situations that the moves kind of do different things depending on the situation. So there's no real in-game tutorial. So especially today, if you're getting this game and you're just buying the cartridge, or if you're playing it off of a ROM, yeah, I could see why you wouldn't know how to climb up the ladder or climb up a cage. What's another one I get all the time? How to throw weapons. How to get on the table, how to go backstage. I don't know if I should maybe do a guide for WWF No Mercy. I know I want to do a guide for Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. Here's Crash climbing up the ladder, and this is what I'm talking about. I always usually let the computer climb up the ladder, because look how fast he gets it. The computer always gets it so much faster than I do, and then you save time mashing on that button. But there you go, the hardcore cousins, the Holly cousins, Hardcore and Crash, winning in a hardcore ladder match. This was actually a fun tag team let's play to do, because all the matches were tag team matches. I really don't like when you do a tag team championship path and then you split up, or you do single matches or handicap matches. I just like playing the tag team matches, and here you go. This was all tag team matches, so that was fun. Here they go, coming out, the super heavyweights, Hardcore Holly and Crash Holly. One more to go. I have Too Cool next, Grandmaster Sexy and Scotty Too Hottie. That should be fun, talking about Too Cool and how that became such a thing. And why it became such a thing. But yeah, let me know what you thought. Watch my other Let's Plays. Check out my WWF No Mercy calls. I got videos on Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, WrestleMania 2000, all the other Aki games. And yeah, that's it. Until next time, I am Be Better Gamer. Thank you for watching. As always, keep watching all the wrestling.